Thank you, Finn. Susie had a question here about almost 15 minutes ago, and I'd like kind of roll some of those back here as quick as we can before you got to go. Susie, you still got your ears on there?
Yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Yeah, please go ahead.
Oh. Hi, Clif. I'd like to ask you a question in regards to NASA and our government. If they actually have the capability of creating the second coming of Jesus Christ with holograms.
That's an interesting question. There's actually two parts of that. A hidden part of it is that you'd have to have, let me put it this way, they could not so create that illusion for me because I'm not a Christ follower for one. That instantly means that none of the neural pathways in my brain would be triggered by their propaganda, and I'd sit back and say, I'm going to check this out. Whereas the people that had been prepped for that would so assume. So in that sense, they could probably get away with the illusion, yes, especially if there was enough prep done in advance. I mean, people will believe all kinds of horseshit. It's just a matter of getting them to understand it in some other capacity than horseshit. Make sense?
Yes, I guess I was just asking if they basically have the capability, the technology, to do that on a global type basis with the holograms.
Understand. There's a fractal technology and then there's holographic technology. And the two either could be used or both could be used together. So yes, you could create a big hologram, as some people have suggested was the tetrahedron over over Moscow. They suggest that it was indeed an illusion created by a complex holographic technique. You could do that, but an easier way for them to do that would be direct mind control, which would be done at a scalar fractal level, where the images they wouldn't have to create a big Jesus coming out of the sky image and have it float around the planet, as a lot of people would imagine. I would think that the easier way to do it would be to fire up all the scalar technology and just simply trigger neural pathways within people's mind that they know create specific images, if you are so pre-programmed to accept those images. Again, make sense?
Yes, thank you for answering that.
Clif, you kind of mentioned before, about our new nuclear policy, but I'd like to ask you a question. Do the Webbots see a nuclear bomb or an atomic device being used in any way at all by either a superpower, nation state, or some sort of rogue group, terrorist organization, or anyone, say, within the next year? Do you see an atomic bomb going off on Earth?
Let me answer that by first prefacing it and saying it's like religion. It's one of those subjects where there's just a whole lot of hot discussion about it and very little delta and very little emotional difference from week to week. So and we live in that delta. We live in the emotional shifts that occur, and thus the change in words. So if there's very little change in the language, there's not a whole lot for us to read. However, that being said, we don't have anything other than the Israeli mistake that relates to nuclear, other than the potential for a nuclear accident related to a volcano somewhere. But it appears that the volcano triggers a shakedown, if you will, of a nuke plant in some capacity where the rods are damaged and spilled, and it's nasty but not catastrophic and is dealt with by local authorities. Now, the Israeli mistake is another issue. That appears to be something really bizarre, like a nuclear tip bunker buster that goes too deep and hits an oil field and sets off this radioactive volcano thing that we all have to deal with. Now, bear in mind, if we approach November 8th and we see a ramp up in early November of the Israelis versus Iranians, then my money would be that on the 8th that they fire off their attack on Iran. For the next 4 days, the world is held in a grip of fear as we kind of wonder what's going on, and then we go into the magnitude of the mistake as the nuke, oil, fire, whatever it is, produces a global fallout that we all have to live with for the next 2 months as we wonder whether or not the fallout's going to come on us. That would all fit the timing, although we don't have any data to suggest that that's the occurrence. And we do know at this point that there's no release prior to July 8th that would suggest the Israelis do anything to anybody really significant relative to Iran.
Cliff, I've got a question.
Go ahead.
By the way, I really love your work, man. I think you rock. I've just got a question about the powers that be. I mean, who are they? In your reads, I mean, who are they? Does it just stop at the 13 families? If it is the 13 families, is there something above that? Who are these people?
I found how we defined the entity, and that'll give you an idea, and you can actually validate a lot of my research. We've got this analysis set of spiders, little software written in C code that reads websites, and it extracts words and plugs them into the lexicon and gives us, if you will, an emotional picture of that particular website. And so I went and hit the Council for Foreign Relations here in the U.S. They've got a website that's just filled with all kinds of treasure things to read if you're a linguist, because they betray so much of their organization and even their casual chatter back and forth. And they have all of these think pieces, and you should really pay attention to the think pieces that the Council on Foreign Relations puts out, because this is their plan, and they're discussing it and critiquing it among themselves. Anyway, so that led me to a series of tracings, and we went from the connections from the Council on Foreign Relations over to the all the way back through actually into the British royal family and connections into the Fabian Society, which led us into connections back to Yale, which led us to the 322 groups, which include the Skull and Bones but are not limited to Skull and Bones, all of which trace their roots back to the Society of Death in Germany. And it comes back to this. In short order, you can think of the powers that be at a very critical level as being those people that attend Bilderberger meetings. There is a higher group, a higher selection within that group, and those would be the people that organize the Bilderberger meetings. And we note that those go all the way back to a bunch of prominent Nazi fellows. So to a certain extent, we can say that Germany may have lost the war, but the Nazis did not. In fact, to a real true extent. A great number of the people are connected, of course, to the royal families. So you can go back the other way, and you can start looking at genealogy. So when, Kerry, the Democrat stooge, was against Bush, the pretender, and they were both cousins to the Queen and all of this kind of stuff, that really points out who's running what, and who is the powers that be. I actually stop at the people that attend Bilderberger, figuring that anybody that's outside of that power loop, whatever their personal family connections or bloodline, is not effectively yielding power, and we can kind of just set them to a side a bit. There certainly is a core group within Bilderberger. I think its number fundamentally eventually comes down to 3. That's the best I can do at the moment.
AZ had a question in chat for you. Something about a space ribbon. Is there anything in the web box about a space ribbon?
We didn't get the ribbon word. We did have banding. We do have there's this whole in the Space Goat Farts entity, which is our official, if you will, official. It's our place where we keep all of the stuff that's officially denied and officially unknown, as well as practically unknown, because there's a whole lot of stuff that humans don't know, and the emotional outcome of the bot runs actually suggest pointers to areas where we just don't have words yet. So within the Space Goat Farts entity, we had an area where we had unknown energies from space, and this was different from sun disease, but it arose about the same time. Maybe it was about 4 or 5 months behind the sun disease stuff coming up, so it would have been in a run behind the very first one. But it's been around for a number of years, and the reading of it is you could indeed suggest, well, I think maybe 35% or so of the linguistics would point to an extrasolar system energetic ribbon as being a very good linguistic description that fits with what we've got. And that would tend to suggest that that would be the source for these unknown energies from space. It makes sense?
Makes sense. Thanks, Cliff.
So, do the robots lean towards a specific prophecy as far as Hopi Indian, Mayan, be it biblical, Muslim? Is there any specific religion prophecy that the webbots seem to align more with than another?
Boy, that's a real tough one. I'm anti-religious. I think all religions are control structures. So I have a tendency to put that bias in and not really examine religious elements very much. In terms of aligning with prophecy, I know about the various different linguistic elements of the prophecies because we analyze those repeatedly because they form emotional, cultural, common ties. So in other words, the prophetic visions of the Hopi, as an example, would have language in them that would represent the entire Mesoamerican structure of prophecy, and we can reconcile that with other linguistic structures and extract emotional, cultural profiles, if you will, which we use in our work in doing the analysis. So we go that far. However, the data within the bot runs themselves doesn't really tend to align with a prophetic vision. It more comes down to we're really friggin' doomed. A lot of it seems to be unknown energies from space and a sun disease, and it's up to anybody's guess as to whether the Hopi have it more right than some Sufi in the desert in Yemen. We don't have anything that clearly points to one religious group over the other being correct. Now, we do have all kinds of stuff that has a tendency to not denigrate, but to reveal religions in a new light relative to the linguistic patterns within them, especially being able to slice and dice the religions into the faith-based versus the working kind of religions like Buddhism or that kind of thing, where you're supposed to work towards the path as opposed to simply believing. And there's a whole lot to suggest that the faith-based religions, primarily at this point, Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are heavily manipulated, and anybody with a sound mind should stay away from anything relating to organized religion within those groups, just because there's so many linguistic traces back to evil people that are shouting things out in, like the Council on Foreign Relations and the Bilderbergers. I mean, they're even announcing that they're paying off the imams and paying off preachers to be part of their control structure. It's in a lot of their text.
There was a couple questions, this is Rush again, that came up about these orbs or ice that are flowing through and around the sun. Is the WebOps picked up anything on that?
We have language within Space Code Farts that deals with all of these under the official category of unknown. This also relates to that strange object that's entering the solar system in a 45-degree